Hi, everyone. It's Mrs. Barnes in the Career Center. I'm happy to have today Andy Woodall from Shenandoah University and my colleague, Amrita Kata. Before we get started, we'd love to hear just a little bit about Shenandoah. Andy?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. So for those who don't know Shenandoah, we are a small, comprehensive university. Small in that we have right around 2,000 undergrads, so nice small class sizes, average class size being about 18, student to teacher ratio being about 10 to 1. So you definitely get that small school environment where professors know who you are. They care deeply about your success. But comprehensive in the fact that we have over 80 different academic programs for you to choose from. We have strengths within the health professions, the performing arts, business, education, and have been recently adding a number of programs for applied technology as well. So it is a university where a lot of different types of students come and thrive, and one in which that support system that you'll develop while you're here is going to be really important to your success as well.
Thank you. So the first question I have is, what is the trend for admissions next year with SATs and ACTs?
So it's appearing every day that more and more colleges are dropping or going test optional for the SAT and ACT, certainly on a temporary basis for the fall of 2021 class, but many are changing their policies entirely so that it is a permanent change. A lot of this is of course, because students aren't able to take tests, but many colleges have also started to do some research to determine whether the SAT or ACT is predictive of success at their institutions as well. So a lot of these things are kind of wrapped up together. I think that's a really positive trend. Shenandoah actually was one of the schools that just recently dropped our SAT and ACT requirement. And so we are going to be entirely test blind. So there's not going to be a need to even submit those scores. We won't even be reviewing them or using them for scholarshiping purposes at all. Which means for applicants, they're going to need to really have a good sense of their strengths academically, and have a good understanding of how they might fit into the admit pool. If they feel like their academics aren't strong in a certain area, and they want to add to their potential for gaining admission, adding additional things like letters of recommendation, personal statements, doing those things that for many schools are optional, will help the admissions office get a sense of who you are a little bit better than maybe just your transcript or just your grades.
So would you say if a school is test optional, students, what would be the right call for them? Should they still submit their scores or should they not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be on an individual basis, and I know that's a frustrating answer for students. Oftentimes, I think oftentimes students are looking for a magic formula in order to gain admission, but it really is up to the individual student. If they feel like their test scores are as indicative or more indicative of their potential, then they should certainly absolutely submit those scores. Mm-hmm. If they feel like their test scores are not representative, though, then I would encourage you not to submit them and go off of those additional materials that I already mentioned.
Right.
Are you guys hearing my dog bark over and over?
Do you think students should take the ACT or SAT or both?
I encourage students to take both. I do, if students are going to take them, I do encourage students to take the ACT one time, the SAT one time, and then whichever test they do better on, take that test a second time. We find that oftentimes students do significantly better on one than they do on the other, and certainly taking a test a second time gets those jitters out, and students tend to do better the second time they take a test.
Right. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. What is FAFSA and what does that apply to?
Yeah. So FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And that is the form that most colleges and universities use nationwide to determine how much financial aid you might be eligible for as a student. They have made it much easier to submit the FAFSA than it used to be. It's still not super simple, but it's not as complex as it used to be. Students can begin submitting that October 1 of their senior year. And you would just go to fafsa.gov and be able to submit that through the government website. When students go to submit that, they're going to need to also provide their parents' tax information as well from the prior 2 years. So we're talking, let's say, 2021. That means the tax information from 2019 is going to be what's used to determine the FAFSA. And so students can begin submitting that as early as October 1. On the FAFSA, there's, I believe, 10 spaces for students to select colleges to send the FAFSA to. Certainly use those 10 spaces. If you are considering a school and it's still on your list and you are considering applying and you have room, go ahead and send it to that institution. That will make it a lot easier for that institution to then evaluate you for financial aid and make it a lot faster for you to get that aid if you are admitted into the institution.
Awesome. And how are merit-based scholarships awarded at your institution?
Sure. So at Shenandoah, nearly every student receives some level of scholarship, and those range, from $3,000 this year anyway, from $3,000 all the way up to almost full tuition. And much of that is determined, was previously determined based upon a student's test scores and GPA. Moving forward, that's just going to really be based upon a student's GPA moving forward. So we are putting a lot of emphasis on that. Every school is a little different in terms of what they do and what they factor into the merit-based scholarships. Some schools may factor in how many advanced level courses you took. Some schools may factor in leadership opportunities and leadership potential. Some schools may give you a certain level of scholarship and then ask you to come to campus for an interview process that will give you potential for more scholarship. So each school is a little different in how they award merit-based scholarships. And that, it really is kind of how they prioritize and what they prioritize as part of the admissions process.
Thank you. Is it possible to ask an out-of-state college to meet their own in-state college tuition prices if you're accepted? And how would you go about asking that?
Yeah. So I have worked at a number of institutions, and I worked at a couple public institutions prior. I think many colleges now have financial aid and spaces set aside for students who are out of state who would like to come and study at their institution. And so oftentimes that is just going to be based upon what program the student might be interested in studying, what academic major they might be studying, whether that school wants to increase students from out of state or not. And so sometimes it might just be as simple as you have decided you want to go into a program that is a high need for that institution, and that institution is just going to offer you in-state tuition as a way to recruit you there. At other times, it might be that you do have to ask, and you do have to follow up, typically with the admissions office or with the financial aid office, and it might be as simple as saying, do you offer any in-state tuition rates for out-of-state students?
Yeah.
And they'll let you know what that process is. They'll go through that with you. There is also the Academic Common Market as well. And so Academic Common Market is an organization that several colleges and universities and states have signed on to that says, if this academic major is not offered at any institution within my state, I can go to another state and get that in-state rate. So sometimes you might see this with really unique majors, like say, graphic design maybe, and your state doesn't have any colleges that offer graphic design. Well, then you could go to West Virginia. In the case of Virginia, you could maybe go to West Virginia or Maryland and get their in-state rate for that graphic design major as well.
Got it. Thanks for explaining that. Is there a way of establishing residency for an out-of-state college so students can pay in-state tuition? Like, for example, if a grandparent is in that said state.
Yeah, I think that's going to really differ by state, truthfully. Each state's a little different in terms of how easy or difficult it is to establish residency. Sometimes it might be just a simple mailing address. Sometimes you will need to prove that you've lived there for a year to 2 years. Sometimes it might be that as a college student, you're not going to be eligible for in-state if you start as a freshman out of state. And so it really just varies by state. I would certainly encourage, as you go through your college search process, you want to be asking these questions about establishing domicile and establishing residency, because that's going to be really the key point. That's the key point for the whole search process. Every college is going to be different. Every college treats things differently, which I know makes it difficult for you in your search process. But certainly going into it with some key questions to ask is going to hopefully help you to navigate through that process and make sure that you get the information you need so that you can make a decision that is the right decision for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would say if you have an interest in going into the performing arts, your college search list is probably going to need to be bigger and a little bit broader. When performing arts programs are admitting students, not only are they factoring in your academics, but then they're factoring in level of talent. And then even more specifically from there, say in theater, they're factoring in your type. And so does that mean that you're an ingenue? Does that mean that you're, tall brunette? They are factoring that into the process as well, because they want to ensure that they have the right type of actors within their program to make sure that they can have a diverse offering of theater productions. And so if they don't have the right types, they're not going to be able to do that. So in some ways, it's really a lot like a sport almost. It's a lot like athletics. A baseball team might be looking for a really great third baseman in one year, but then in another year, they're not going to need a third baseman. And so it's going to be harder for that third baseman to gain admission. And the same for music. The orchestra is looking for certain instruments that they need to fill in a given year. And so that is factored into that process too. And you're never quite sure if the year before there were 5 trombonists that got admitted, and you're now going to be the 6th trombonist and they only need 4. And so also asking those questions as you're going into the audition process, also asking those questions as you're going into your search process of, what are your needs? What are you looking for? Do you have anyone who plays the same instrument that I do? How many do you have? And trying to get feedback from the faculty if you can. It's not always easy, but if you can get feedback from the faculty in the program about who are they looking for, what's the level of talent, what's going to be required as part of that audition, or what are they going to be looking for as part of that audition, is really, I think, really beneficial for you. If you can get a lesson with a faculty member prior to auditioning with them, if you can shadow one of their classes, if you can sit in with an ensemble or a dress rehearsal and you have an opportunity to do that prior to auditioning, take that opportunity. That is going to be also really, really beneficial for you to really get a sense of again, what are they looking for? Is it someone like me? And will I be the right fit for this program or not? Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. And please let us know in our world in admissions if we can help you all on your end as you go through your search process during these difficult and very different times for all of us.